Welcome to FFRF's Ask an Atheist program. I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor, co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
And I'm Ryan Jane, an attorney and legislative counsel at FFRF.
So our topic today is practice pluralism, keep governmental meetings prayer-free and secular. And our guest is Heidi Wegleitner, who is a supervisor in Dane County, Wisconsin, and she's working to do just that. She's been championing a resolution to remove prayer from the official Dane County Board agenda that has made her a lightning rod and resulted in threats.
We'll introduce Supervisor Wegleitner in a moment, but first we want to invite you to participate. If you have questions or comments, please ask them over Facebook or email askanatheist@ffrf.org, and we'll go to your questions and comments at the end of the show.
So Heidi Wegleitner is an attorney who works for Legal Action of Wisconsin, and for the last 10 years she has represented District 2 in Dane County, Wisconsin, which is the home base of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And she's authored and advocated for a variety of progressive legislation, including for housing, climate change, homelessness, and one of my favorites, requiring lactation rooms and free menstrual products in Dane County buildings. So Heidi, thank you so much for your advocacy and for joining us today.
It's great to be with you.
So Heidi, can you tell us a little bit about why you object to the Dane County Board officially scheduling a prayer and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I just don't think it's appropriate for the county board agenda to be endorsing prayer. And I've always felt uncomfortable reciting the pledge at the beginning of meetings. And I think the county board has worked to be more intentional about our how we operate our meetings and how we want to be inclusive and equitable in our county governance. And we send a message when we publish meeting agendas about who's included, who's not included, what happens at our meetings, and what we believe in or don't believe in. And so I think every 2 years we revise our rules and make recommendations that then get voted on at the very first meeting of the term, which is happening next Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're going to vote on new rules changes to the county board procedure, the county board meeting procedures. And so I made these recommendations because of my, personal feelings on this issue, as well as, conversations I've had with, friends on social media and in real life too about what, just generally just being surprised that we even have these things on our agenda, because I think, Dane County is often thought of as a progressive county, pluralistic, and many people just couldn't believe when I posted a little over a year ago that I thought we should stop saying the Pledge of Allegiance, that we actually did that. And I think people were even more surprised to learn that we actually have codified in our county board agenda prayer.
So Heidi, I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to talk a little bit about the history of prayer and FFRF's protest of prayer at the Dane County Board meeting. But could you tell us a little bit more about why you're objecting to the Pledge of Allegiance? Is it because of the under God in it? Is it for other reasons as well?
It's for that reason, but other reasons as well. I think in a functioning democracy, we shouldn't be pressuring people to stand up and pledge to a flag. And I think the fact that the Pledge of Allegiance has been manipulated politically so many times throughout our history underscores the reason why we should question it and why we should not really, pressure people into standing and reciting it at our meetings. So I know that many people are aware that under God was added in 1954 during, the height of the Red Scare to distinguish us from, an atheist, communist country. But some people don't. And I do know that is why people are uncomfortable Some people are uncomfortable saying it, and people have all different versions of saying it. But the reality is that that's what is included in the Pledge of Allegiance right now is those words under God. And that sends a definite message to all who are listening about what the county board stands for.
Can I ask a question, Heidi, about another supervisor asked, or he commented in defense of the prayer practice. He said that it is a respect for religious pluralism in the county. And I testified in support of your resolution, and I spoke to that point, but I'd like to give you a chance. What is your take on that the prayer is a symbol of religious pluralism?
The emails I got in response to this proposal to remove the word prayer from our county board agenda was not from a diverse religious standpoint. It was very much about a monotheistic view of religion. It was very much about Christianity and God. So I really question the reality in which that is based, because I think that the people I heard from had a very certain vision about America that was Christian, and they thought that removing the word prayer was a threat to that and to them. The proposal that's come out of, I'm sorry, did you want to?
No, go ahead.
The proposal that comes out of committee, and I was clear that my intent in making this change was not to really, take away the opportunity for those supervisors who do want to offer a prayer to do so. The reality is many do not, but this proposal was not to take away that right, but to have that come under a more general umbrella of inspirational message. And so that the proposal actually removes the word prayer from the official county board agenda, which is codified in our ordinances. Then, recognizing that a supervisor would not be prohibited from offering a prayer as their type of inspiration. So the proposal that came out of committee actually does strike the word prayer from our agenda in the ordinances, but then adds a definition of inspirational message that includes things like poem and prayers in a numbered list. There's maybe 6 or different types of things, quotation that somebody could offer, and it's not an exclusive list as their type of inspirational message. But what's different now is that every county board agenda right now that's posted to the public every time the county board meets says prayer on it, inspirational message / prayer. If this ordinance is approved next Tuesday, you will not see prayer on our agendas anymore. That doesn't mean a prayer will never be said at the beginning of a meeting, but you will not see the word prayer on our agendas.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. And the reality to me seems obvious that when there's a prayer and it's almost always a prayer to one particular God, which is the majority, that's not respecting religious pluralism at all. The way to respect religious pluralism is to keep it secular, or like to kind of bend over backwards for it is to specifically say, if you want to say a prayer, you can. I think that's doing more than enough for religious pluralism, personally. So, Heidi, I wanted to ask, we were sorry to find out that you and the board had received a lot of nasty responses on this matter, and this I noticed happened after national Fox News covered your proposal. Can you talk about what kinds of threats or comments you've received about this?
Yeah, I've been, on the county board for 10 years, and, I've not shied away from advocating on issues that sometimes challenge our system and might be considered controversial. This is the first time I've ever felt unsafe. And the county board received, probably hundreds or more emails from all over the country. And I received many emails just personally sent to me. I received voicemails and calls, and there are many misogynist, words used against me that I'm not going to repeat on this program, but you can use your imagination. I was called every name in the book. I received voicemails threatening to hang me. And I actually reached out to the county board, office and administration to make sure that other folks knew this was happening. And have talked with law enforcement, which I rarely do. Mm-hmm. But this felt so different than I've ever, I'm fine. We, have the right to disagree on policy, but what I think was communicated was the definition of terrorism, which is threatening violence for a political objective, right? And that's what I heard, and I'm not just throwing that around lightly. I'm not going to back down from that. That's not appropriate, and that's not how we should make our decisions. And I just think it's really sad that some folks seem to make a hobby. I mean, I know during the public health emergency that many folks on school boards were subjected to similar sort of scary, threatening, hateful types of communications, and we're not in this for the money or the prestige. I'm a local government official, and nobody, deserves to be communicated to in that way.
And I would like to talk a little bit about the history of the complaints about prayer at the Dane County Board. And I don't know if you know, Heidi, that the way the Freedom from Religion Foundation began was because my mother and she was a well-known feminist activist, became aware when we had another reason to go to the Dane County Board that they were praying. And we went in to complain, and we thought that it would sound very weak if it was just a mother-daughter team. And so we thought we'll call ourselves the Freedom from Religion Foundation. We had another elderly gentleman lend his name, so there were 3 of us. And this was front page news when we complained to the Dane County Board. And we probably got crank calls. We didn't have social media and Fox News back in those days. But after a year, the board thought about it, and then they brought out a policy to ask for an inspirational moment. It did not have that word prayer/inspiration. So somewhere in the last 40 years, that prayer sneaked back in. And so we're so glad that you're championing this. And I do also want to say that at the Freedom from Religion Foundation, when we get threats, it's typically when we ask to keep religion out of government. It is not for our work promoting atheism or free thought, just educating the public about non-theism. It's always when we are trying to buttress the wall of separation between church and state that our Constitution requires. And I find that very telling. That shows the harm of entangling religion and government, because those who are religious think that they're first-class citizens and the rest of us don't belong here. And that's the typical thing we get is leave the country. So I imagine you got a lot of harassment like that. Is that what you were being told in part?
Yeah, and that they would give me a ride out of the country and things like that. So I think that's such an important point about why that government entanglement with religion is so concerning. And these communications I received just really kind of reinforced why I wanted to pursue this. It was really telling to me how some people clung to this religious aspect of government.
Yeah, well, and it shows how inherently divisive this practice is, right? If we weren't having this debate, then there wouldn't be any reason for anyone to be offended and sending these threatening emails or anything. It would just be a matter of, this is the county board, we're going to get down to county board business. But instead, because they've gotten so used to having this position of privilege, the moment that gets challenged, there's just this visceral, horrible reaction.
Absolutely.
And I also wanted to point out that 40% of Dane County, at least, identifies as having no religious affiliation. So that's a lot of Dane County residents to be told to, expected to listen to a prayer or show obeisance to a deity when they have to come before the board for these very terrestrial issues of, liquor licenses and sewers and variances. And we always say, why can't public officials pray on their own time and dime? But I did want to ask you, Heidi, can you tell me what your personal views are on religion, or if you don't mind my asking?
Sure. I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school, but largely have not practiced any religion in 20 plus years. So I would say kind of agnostic on that. I do think like I draw on different traditions, and that's certainly some of the things I learned as a child were filtered through a lens of social justice Catholic teaching, and other things weren't as much. So yeah, I don't practice any faith right now, but I have relationships certainly with people that do, and try to be respectful of different people's points of view on this. And I do feel really value the work of Freedom from Religion Foundation, and have many close family members who are atheists. I don't know that I would call myself an atheist. I'm more just kind of unsure.
Well, then you represent over 40% of those Dane County residents who are saying they are unaffiliated with religion. And we deserve representation, and we think it's wonderful that you're giving that kind of representation. And I do want to have a chance for Ryan, who testified as an attorney before the Dane County Board recently. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you said there?
Sure. So I mentioned a little bit that I responded to the point that you put so well earlier about how the way to keep respect for religious pluralism is to keep government meetings secular, just like our founders intended, right? That's the solution here. It's putting the issue completely backwards to say, well, we need to insert religion in order to respect pluralism. That doesn't make any sense at all. So I touched on that. And then the other issue that we mentioned at the beginning, but that I touched on, is the other part of your proposal to remove the pledge. So I'm also strongly in favor of that. And not just because of the under God language. I touched on, not only is that an issue relating to promoting religion, but it's also a little bit strange. I have a personal history recently. I have a young child who's been starting to say the pledge with her school, and it's, as a young parent, it struck me as really odd that we are indoctrinating our kids this way, where every time she sees a flag, she just goes into zombie mode and starts saying the pledge. And she's like, this is kind of weird that she's, reciting this oath to a flag every time she sees it. This is the kind of nationalism that has caused so much strife throughout the world's history. I guess as a student of history, it just strikes me as odd that we would be following that path. And when you put religion into the pledge, which of course was done belatedly in the 50s, then it becomes not just nationalism, it becomes Christian nationalism. So it really is also tied to the other issues. So those are the issues that I touched on at first. And I got one question which was interesting. I forgot if it was you or another supervisor who asked about other practices in Wisconsin. So I did some research after the meeting and looked up what other surrounding counties and Wisconsin's biggest counties, and then Madison, the city of Madison as well. And what I found was that actually Dane County is in the minority for having a prayer at their meeting, and especially having one written into the agenda. So they're really, you guys are kind of behind the ball to get rid of this. So this is long overdue, if anything. And so I sent some supplemental research to the board to that effect too, to just kind of say, hey, get with the times, get rid of this prayer practice.
And I think we should also point out that give a little shout out to Madison City Council, which my mother and I went before them back in 1976 too, and they took about a year. They dropped prayer completely, and they have not resumed it. So good for them.
And they're also the only body that I found that also already doesn't say the pledge. So they got that issue correct as well, yes.
Yeah. So Heidi, do you have any other comments you'd like to add about the divisiveness of prayer in public meetings, what this experience has been like?
Yeah, it's interesting too, like that was, I think, one of the early points I made in talking with the reporter about this, because I wasn't trying to make a huge deal about it. I work on a lot of different issues, and this is one I haven't really spent a lot of time on in the past. But I did feel like it was divisive. And I remember, before COVID, for example, for the pledge, I would stand up and just, have my hands at my waist and not say anything. And, we saw more and more protests at sporting events and other things related to the national anthem and people, protesting police violence against people of color, and in showing that through kneeling during the national anthem and things like that. And, it's certainly something that crossed my mind, but I also didn't want to center myself and make it a big deal. But I feel really uncomfortable and was not going to say or recite the pledge, and haven't. And frankly, didn't want to stand up, but I did because I knew it would be a big deal if I didn't. And then we go to the Zoom meetings, which we've been on for a couple years, and it's been kind of a relief and I'm not the only one that didn't say the pledge, right? But it's been kind of a relief not to have to stand up. And I just, sometimes turn off my camera or not, I just don't have to say it, and you don't feel like this serious pressure, I think, that we feel. And so it does feel like, when people are telling you to get out of the country if you don't like it, and that there's no way, this is just so terrible. How could the pledge be divisive, as they're screaming at you in all caps on an email and calling you all these terrible names? It's just kind of mind-boggling that they don't understand how that's divisive, right? I will say, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that what you're saying proves this point, that individuals should not be forced to show obeisance to somebody else's religious beliefs. And that usually involves standing up or being told to bow your head, or in some way making yourself physically non-conforming, so that even if you're a member of the public going into the Dane County Board asking for a favor, or you're a member of the Dane County Board itself, you're kind of imperiling your own standing there by outing yourself as not being religious. And I think that what you've said proves that point so well.
Yeah. I will say, and when you give, interestingly, these are kind of connected too within the board agenda, because we rotate who gives the inspirational message or prayer as it's currently codified. And at the end of that, then you are expected to lead the group in the Pledge of Allegiance. And there have been some awkward moments when a couple of us who don't say the pledge just don't say anything, right? And then it's kind of like, somebody's got to lead the group in the pledge now. I will note that I think this debate has already somewhat influenced the practice of the county board chair. In fact, at the last meeting, Supervisor Hazel was giving the inspirational message, and the board chair asked them if they wanted to lead the group in the pledge, or if they wanted the chair to lead the group in the pledge, which is a new sort of option that the chair had extended to that supervisor, who in fact opted to have to not lead the pledge and have the chair do it. So
you're creating some consciousness raising.
Yeah, moving in the right direction.
Yeah, you're raising consciousness. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we can get to questions, and just before we do, I wanted to just underscore something that Annie Laurie mentioned earlier, that this specific issue is the seminal FFRF issue. So thank you again for being the champion of it. It's such a unique thing. Now we fight so many issues all over the country, but it is specifically prayer at Dane County Board meetings that got this organization started. So.
And also, I should add, and maybe we didn't tell you this, Heidi, that prayer complaints about prayer in government are still the single largest one complaint we get. I mean, I would say it's right up there at the top. It's just been a thorn in the side of non-religious Americans for so long, because it does kind of imply that we're not citizens, or we're second-class citizens when we go to governmental meetings and we get prayed at.
Yeah, and of course the Supreme Court screwed this one up a number of years ago in the town of Greece case, where they allowed the practice with this kind of newfangled analysis of historicity, and under the idea that, like, well, as long as we're allowing everyone to do it, what's the harm? So it was really counter to the whole history of state church jurisprudence, but at least, we still have the ability to just talk about, not from a legalistic perspective so much, but more just a common sense and, pluralism perspective of just, this is the right thing to do. This is a secular meeting. It should be secular. So, all right, let's get to some questions. You mentioned, you touched on this, but if you can expand just a little bit and mention if your proposal would change this at all. Anne asks, what procedure would the board use for determining who gets to give the inspirational message at each meeting? And I would add, the question, will it be only supervisors who would give the inspirational message, or has there been any discussion about bringing in outside guests to deliver it?
It's basically a rotating system. It's like alphabetical order, I think, and it so it just, we go through the list kind of the same order we vote in. Somebody will be designated in that list order. In terms of guest speakers, it's not. There was recently a poet who was invited to sort of be part of the inspirational message and deliver a message. That actually didn't happen officially under the inspirational message item on the agenda. They came in under a special matter or announcement, which basically follows inspirational message, if that makes sense. A little bit technical, but it is the supervisor, I believe, under county board rules, who's designated to do the inspirational message / prayer. But we have seen somebody be invited in sort of related to that in the special matter area when people make announcements.
Yeah, well, that does make sense. I mean, this is the opening statement. This is government speech, right? And there's already a period of the meeting where the public can come in and say something. So if someone wants to come in and say what they want to say, they already have the opportunity to do that. But what we've seen in practice is if you bring in people to give an opening, statement, and you suggest to them that it might be a prayer, what's going to happen is that there's going to be certain people who invite preachers to come in, and preachers are going to preach. So that's what's going to happen.
And I have to say,
can I just say one clarifying thing? This was part of a package of proposals I introduced. These ones clearly got the most attention, but all of them were to open up the board for more public comment. Right now, the county board does not have any general public comment. So you can only speak to the board on an official item on our agenda that we're, like taking action on. And if that was already posted to the board and it's coming back, you don't have the right to public comment. So yes, public comment is taken, but there are limitations.
So Heidi, I wanted to make a comment that when we first complained about prayer, this is 76 at the Dane County Board, it was a public comment period where it could be about anything. So it was very important to our ability as citizens to bring this to the board that we did have that comment. So thank you for championing that. And then the other kind of comment I would make is that when this inspirational moment was first brought in, and we had a lot of interesting supervisors at that time, and hippies and people from the anti-war movement, it was really pretty interesting. The inspirational moments were usually not religious, and they were usually extremely varied and very personal. And I'm wondering, is that still true?
I don't know. I wouldn't say they are as exciting or interesting as you describe. I think maybe our culture's changed a little bit since then. they tend to be, you know, personal. Often people might talk about, you know, family members, or read a quote. Sometimes they get a little bit political. And yeah, oftentimes people are drawing on some other source. And there's certainly at least one supervisor who regularly offers a prayer. Usually, you might have one inspirational per term. The way it all gets allocated out with 37 different supervisors.
So there's a related question that Dale asks about, do you draw any lines? He asks, do they allow all forms of prayer? So is there any limit to, overly sectarian or proselytizing prayer, or has that never come up, or are there any lines there?
I've never observed anybody being ruled out of order. Like I said, it's just been like one supervisor, it seems, that has offered a prayer, and it's generally been kind of a standard sort of prayer, and was not, nobody objected, or it was not like ruled out of order in any way. I wouldn't say, yeah. So we haven't seen that at this time.
That's not shocking to me that Dane County would be the place where, there's at least something going for Dane County, that you're not going to get people who are so obviously out of line and divisive, whereas other places in the country where we've complained about government prayer, it's outlandishly divisive every single time, and that's why, we move in. But a lot of times there, the issue is that the dissenting voice is just drowned out by the types of people who are, emailing you that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one final question. This is from Jane, who asks, what advice would you give to other local government officials who are trying to remove prayer or the pledge from board meetings, and especially the people who are living in rural and conservative areas where this might be, more scary or even dangerous for them to be bringing up?
Well, draw on a network of support. I mean, FFRF has been wonderful. The expertise and, you weighing in on this and your history has just been so informative and helpful to me. There's other, elected officials and former elected officials that may share your concerns that you can draw on for support. I also, when I was doing my own research, it probably wasn't as comprehensive as yours, Ryan, but it seemed to me that it was kind of haphazard as to which bodies actually included prayer or in the pledge. And most likely, this may not have been talked about in a really long time. So, and that's why I think it was still in the county board. I mean, I really appreciate that you all know the history. You can share that special history with us. But this hadn't even been talked about, I don't think, in a long time. Nobody, and a lot of my supervisors, a lot of our supervisors are newer and would not know this history at all. So, and the fact that even talking about it is such a threat to certain people, I think should really give people pause about why it is that we're doing it, right? And so I think it's really healthy to be intentional. You may want to, try to do a little research about, first, make sure, look up your agendas and if they're posted online and see if it's on there. And then you may want to, check in with your local electeds to see, do they know how long it's been on there, what their feelings are on it. Share with them why you might have concerns about that and what they think about it, and start a conversation. Because I think that's really healthy. That's what democracy is about. And we shouldn't just be accepting and doing these things because they've been done that way before, right? And that's what it seems like to me is sometimes just why a local body operates the way it does, is because nobody thought to question it or, wanted to talk about it. And perhaps I'm sure, there are some people in in your community that also share your concerns, and likely some elected officials too.
Yeah, and I would add that in this, COVID and hopefully post-COVID era, it's easier than ever to get involved and to keep track of your elected officials at the local level, because more and more they are Zoom meetings, so you can either speak at the meeting from the comfort of your own home, and oftentimes they're putting the recordings of the meeting, video of the meetings online, so you can go in oftentimes and even check after the fact and see, hey, what is the practice, even if it's not on the agenda, are they saying a prayer or saying the pledge to open the meeting? You can check up on this stuff and get active just from your computer. You don't have to actually go to the meeting at the time.
And also, Ryan, I think that we should do a little advertisement for signing up. Anybody who's watching this show at any time can sign up for FFRF's action alerts. So if there's something going on in your community, then you'll hear from us and you can contact your public official. And we have a new system that once you sign up, you get a page where you see all your public officials, correct?
That's right. And so I do all the legislative tracking at FFRF, and I'll say that it's hard sometimes when even if you're following the news, a lot of times they don't tell you what you need to know to comment on the news, to comment on the issues you care about. So we take care of that for you. We find the right time to weigh in, and we'll send you an email or a text message that just says, if you agree with this and you want to weigh in, then just click here, and we will auto send the message to your elected officials for you. So it's a really simple, sleek process, and you can sign up at our website, or you can also Google FFRF Action Center, and it'll be the top thing that pops up. Just put your information with your address in, and you'll be signed up for our action alerts.
Yep, we need more secular voices. Well, thank you so much, Heidi, for joining us. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, it would be wonderful if folks want to communicate with the county board before Tuesday's meeting. The agenda for the meeting will be posted by this Friday. And you do need to register in advance, at least 30 minutes before, but that link will be in the agenda at least 30 minutes before the start of the meeting. The meeting's at 7, so you need to register by 6:30, but you can register as soon as you can see that agenda. And you can just register in support of the agenda item without speaking, and you also certainly can register to speak as well. You can also, email the Dane County Board and check out our website for information about how to get in touch with your individual supervisors or how to email the entire county board. So thanks again so much for having me. I really appreciate all the support in this important work.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. And as soon as that agenda is up, we will be doing an action alert to our local membership. Great. So we think that the work you're doing is awesome, and we want to support it in any way that we can.
Thank you.
So I just want to say, in addition to this show, FFRF produces Free Thought Radio every Thursday. It's on some low stations here in Madison, 7 other cities, but it's available wherever you get your podcast. And our guest this week will be author Ian Millhauser, who is author of this book called Agenda: How a Republican Supreme Court is Reshaping America. So talk about timely.
And on Free Thought Matters, FFRF's TV show available every Thursday on FFRF's YouTube channel and broadcasting in 13 cities on Sunday. Our guest,
including Madison.
Our guest is the young activist Will Larkins, who bravely testified against the Don't Say Gay bill at his legislature and led a walkout of 500 students at his Florida high school.
I think it's a human construct that has held so much political and social power for so long. I mean, religion, the Catholic Church, these structures, they have created, they've built these systems of oppression that oppress people like me, that oppress women, that oppress anyone who doesn't fall into man that looks like man, woman that looks like woman. For example, in many indigenous groups, there were 5 recognized genders, and non-binary was a thing. And then when colonizers came and stole America, they brought religion with them and instilled these systems of oppression that are still held up to this day.
So that's Will Larkins. You can watch that whole show on Free Thought Matters on our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching Ask an Atheist and tune in next week, same time, same place, every Wednesday at noon Central for our Facebook Live show.